Hello everyone and welcome to a new solo challenge. Today we are going to attempt something comparable to that of Rattata, since the Pokemon I have chosen to spotlight is Sentret. Just like the rat from the first generation, Sentret is one of the first Pokemon that you can encounter in the game, and it has abysmal stats. Today, we will try to finish the game Pokemon Heartgold with only a Sentret in battle. HM slaves are allowed, but they cannot interact with nearby trainers. The second rule that seems essential for this kind of challenge is that items are prohibited in battle, as we want to see if Sentret is capable of finishing the game without external aid and if it can defeat all the gym bosses and the Johto League. Obviously, it won't be easy since, because it's catchable early in the game, this Pokemon is very weak and will be easily defeated by any slightly powerful Pokemon. Fortunately, the advantage that this Pokemon can have is the diversity of moves it can learn, and that's something we'll focus on throughout the adventure. So fasten your seatbelts, we're setting out to conquer Johto with a Sentret. As usual, we start in New Bark Town, and after a discussion with our mother, we can go to Professor Elm's lab, who will give us a Pokemon for a specific mission. We head to Mr. Pokemon's house, which has a gift for Professor Oak's assistant. As you can see on the screen, I've modified the choice of the starter so that we get a Sentret directly, and that will be the only modification we'll make to the game. We can then traverse Cherry Grove City to head north and reach Mr. Pokemon's house with Professor Oak. After a long discussion, we receive the gift, and upon leaving the house, we receive a call from the Professor Elm as he was robbed. Returning to our hometown, we encounter our old friend Silver, who seems to have stolen the best Pokemon as he took Totodile instead of Chikorita. However, he tries to challenge us, and we have to settle the matter with claws. It's not much of a problem at this level. Once the report is made to the police, we can keep our Pokemon, and the adventure finally begins. Without further ado, we can head straight to Violet City. We make sure to battle as many trainers as possible before entering the Sprout Tower, and after a few tries, we can defeat the Elder to obtain the HM Flash. Thus, when we go to face the first of the region's champions, our Sentret is at level 14, and we'll combine Scratch attacks to defeat the first Pidgey, which is significantly weaker than our Pokemon. However, Albert's next Pokemon is a Pidgeotto, completely illegal since it is at level 13 when it's not supposed to evolve until a few levels later. And for this one, we're going to need some luck because the first generation bird is much stronger than us, and if our Fury Swipes doesn't hit 5 times, collecting the first badge is compromised. Fortunately, we haven't taken many sand attacks, so we are able to succeed with our attack. There we go, the Zephyr badge is in the bag, already 1/8 of the region filled. It's going to be easy, right? The difficulty curve is relatively easy in Johto, but leaving Violet City without the right Pokemon is relatively difficult. But before that, we'll get to know Team Rocket, who have invaded Slowpoke Well in hopes of perpetuating a trade of their Pokemon tails. And since we're the good guys, we'll call Kurt to go get rid of them. Once in the well, we can defeat all the trainers, and it's Executive Proton who's in charge of the operation. Our tactic won't really change for this early part of the game, and we'll brute force with Fury Swipes to fulfill our objectives as quickly as possible. Thanks Kurt for his invaluable help. We've almost done all the work, but the problem with this city is that we can't escape without having to face our rival, and the city's gym leader has a Scyther with U-turn, a bug stab that hurts us terribly. So we'll try to beat each of these trainers several times to train our Pokemon. The first time we have an opportunity to win one of these battles is against Bugsy, and we're already at level 27. He starts the battle with Scyther, and as predicted, he's going to use U-turn, and before returning to his Pokeball, he's going to decrease our defense, but we know Defense Curl to increase it back. So we'll continue this little game of boosting and debuffing against the Pokemon because it's imperative that our defense is high enough to withstand the attacks of his bugs. After a while, Scyther gets tired and uses U-turn, and as we've more or less managed the situation, we've only lost 19 GP. Metapod enters the battle, and it's time to boost our defense to the max, which is rather ironic when you know that Metapods usually boost their defense all the time, and they're not good for anything else really. So we can attack and use the move Slam, a normal stab that can neutralize the Cocoon. Scyther is back to play U-turn again, but due to an AI not yet optimized for the game, it chooses Quick Attack twice, allowing us to tank. We can finish it off again with our own means, and there's only a Kakuna left in our way. The real threat of the battle has fallen, and we can sweep away the weak Cocoon in one go. Bingo, that's 2 badges, but the main obstacle is still there, and it's Silver. However, we've gained a new attack thanks to Bugsy's TM U-turn. So we can hit our opponent's Ghastly, and in 3 hits, it's knocked out. Zubat is the next Pokemon, and it's essential that Slam succeeds so that we can get rid of it quickly. Silver's final Pokemon is Croconaw, and at our level, we're able to defeat it. The main issue was primarily the Ghastly that we couldn't get past, and it was Cursing, which placed a counter on our Pokemon. But victory is secured against Silver, and we can head to the Ilex Forest to retrieve Farfetch'd and access Goldenrod City. We won't delay much longer to assault the normal-type gym, and Whitney will welcome us with a Pokemon that wouldn't be eligible in her team if a second remake of these games were to come. With just one Slam, we can prevent it from using Metronome, giving us some peace before facing Miltank. This Pokemon will bring back memories of Vietnam for some, and even at our level, it's challenging. It's becoming a recurring theme on my channel. We need a critical hit to defeat Whitney with a priority priority Sucker Punch. Yes, Sentret also learns Sucker Punch, proving its wide move pool will be very useful during the adventure. So that's 3 badges for us, once the opposing trainer is willing to give them, and we can close the central loop of Johto and head north to Ekrutik City. This city, famous for its 2 towers, underwent storyline changes in the remake, as we're required to revisit it several times, particularly to encounter legendary Pokemon. The first stop is the Burned Tower, where several important storyline trainers are literally within 3 meters of each other, but don't even talk. However, we have to confront Silver. It's becoming routine. He starts with his Ghastly. We can't really hit it with Sucker Punch since it uses very few offensive moves, so we've obtained Shadow Claw east of Ekrutik City, a TM that can one-shot the ghost Pokemon. Next is Croconaw, which we can almost 2-shot, but that wouldn't matter since we also have priority with Quick Attack. We only endure 2 Scary Faces before welcoming the next Pokemon, which we already know as Zubat. Shadow Claw helps us clean up, and Magnemite is the last Pokemon, so we mustn't miss to avoid taking a Sonic Boom, which inflicts fixed damage. The conflict is resolved. Now we'll awaken the legendary beasts, and finally, the visit to the Ghost-type gym is free. The advantage of our normal-type Pokemon is that it's almost immune to all of Morty's Pokemon's attacks, and it also benefits from a super effective attack. So even if Gengar puts us to sleep, when we wake up, we can take them all down one by one. But this advantage will be short-lived, as the next 2 gyms are theoretically fully capable of handling the normal type. But before that, we'll take the sea towards Cianwood City, and take the opportunity to train our Pokemon a bit, considering the upcoming challenges. Chuck's first Pokemon is a Primeape, and since he chooses not to use any fighting moves, with 2 slams, we can defeat the monkey Pokemon. Finally, the next Pokemon is Poliwrath, and for this occasion, we forced ourselves to return to the game corner in Goldenrod to play the Voltorb game, which, if mastered, allows us to win quite a few tokens. After a bit of try-hard, we can buy the TM Thunderbolt, which will be useful to deal with this water-type Pokemon. We have only 15 GP left at the end of the battle, but at level 42, we can defeat Poliwrath and obtain the 5th badge. In hindsight, training Sentret might have been more profitable, but since I hate training Pokemon, I find it a good opportunity to exploit TMs, especially with such a flexible Pokemon. So we can return to the lighthouse for Jasmine to resume duty, but in the hope of gaining some experience, we won't face her right away. Instead, we'll dismantle the Team Rocket hideout in Mahogany Town, as there are mandatory and generally weaker trainers there. Thus, we can return to the city of the 6th gym with a level 48 Sentret, and as you'll see, a well-thought-out tactic. We struggled a bit too much to obtain the TM Thunderbolt, but a new attack is necessary to deal with one of Jasmine's Pokemon, that's Surf. Consequently, we no longer have Stab on our Pokemon, but it will suffice for this battle, as Dig can totally finish off the Magnemites, while Surf is enough to 2 HKO Steelix. However, we're doomed to keep this attack until Blackthorn City since that's where the move deleter is, and Surf is an HM. But it doesn't matter, right after, we can visit Price, and I'm not sure if his Pokemon are stronger than Jasmine's. So we can use Thunderbolt. Even if our special attack isn't very strong against Sentret, it will be enough to defeat the first seal. Piloswine is called next, and Surf is perfect for this Pokemon Ground and Ice. The final Pokemon is Dugong, and if we hold on with 9 GP, Thunderbolt gets rid of the Pokemon, so we already have 7 badges, even if our Sentret is significantly over-leveled. It was totally predictable when you know the power of this Pokemon, which is totally non-existent actually. However, we'll note the appearance of Raikou while we were training our Pokemon, and now let's head to the Goldenrod radio tower, since Team Rocket had the good idea to take hostages in this building to send signals to Giovanni, except it's unsuccessful, and it's his son that we find in the basement. His team is starting to become relatively balanced, and if they make the right moves, we can reset directly. On the other hand, we're at a high level, so if we attack first, we can easily get rid of the opponent's Pokemon. The first one is Golbat, and since it chooses Air Cutter, we can send a Thunderbolt its way and crack our fingers to welcome the next Pokemon, Feraligatr. Same thing comes to him, even if this time Thunderbolt is a 2 HKO. Next comes Magnemite, a Pokemon we're used to encountering in this game, where the TM Dig is also easily accessible, so we can finish it off without too much thought. The next Pokemon is his Sneasel, and it can't hit us, so we'll use the Move Rest to recover all our HP, and use an attack on the 3rd turn to prepare for the rest of the battle. The last Pokemon is Haunter, which has the Levitate ability, and they help us finish it off by using Curse, so we can send a Surf to it on the same turn, which will allow us to win the battle. Another successful battle against the rival, which relies more on luck, and by trying repeatedly, he makes small mistakes, which allows us to continue the adventure, and hope to beat the game with a Pokemon from the first route of the game. One by one, the team's investigation members fall, which will allow us to access certain additional optional rooms of the radio tower to face Giovanni's substitute, Archer. He has 2 fire Pokemon, first a Houndour, then a Houndoom, which on paper can beat our Pokemon. Thanks to a particular set, we can survive the hits, and Surf does the job. The final Pokemon is Coughing, but we'll play it smart by taking a little well-deserved rest and recover some HP to be able to attack it with better health. This victory will force Team Rocket to disband, and the director of the radio tower will give us the Rainbow Wing. It's an interesting detail, since facing Ho-Oh is mandatory in this game, but before that, we can continue eastward to enter the Ice Cave and access the remote town of Blackthorn. In this town lives Lance's cousin Claire, who has Dragon Pokemon and who is the 8th Johto champion. I don't think I'm surprising you by saying that Sentret got beaten badly by the trainers in this gym, especially the champion. And so, to be able to compete with this trainer, we had to use strategic sets from the 2nd generation, including the one with Rest and Sleep Talk, which we obtained at the Goldenrod department store. It's again in the Voltorb flip game that we get it. So Claire started with a Gyarados, and Thunderbolt is directly useful to deal with it, so it's Dragonair that is called to the revenge kill its partner. Ice Beam can one-shot it, but it's not always the case, so we have to do it twice for Dragonair. Next comes Claire's signature Pokemon, a Kingdra. Since our HP is very low, we're going to fall asleep directly and use the Sleep Talk move on our sleep turns to attack the Seahorse at every opportunity we get. Every 2 turns, we fall asleep to come back to 162 GP and avoid being one-shotted by this formidable Pokemon. It's actually close, and we're left with only 1 GP at one point, but we can rest right after it was close. Finally, the Pokemon is knocked out, and it's a last Dragonair that will have the honor of being the ultimate Pokemon of the Johto champions. The time spent to get Ice Beam is directly paying off, and we win the battle. Claire can give us the badge once we've completed a task in the dragon's lair behind the gym. The story in Johto is still not over, as we'll have to return to Ecruteak City to first face all the Kimono girls, and we'll have to chain them all in a row, which is quite complicated when we can't heal in battle. Fortunately, Rest is our friend, and after several attempts, we can take care of the evolutions of the 1st and 2nd generations. So, we can access the bell tower, and once at the top, we face the monster on the game's cover, a certain Ho-Oh. Honestly, this is not an easy Pokemon to beat, and it took level 70 to defeat it. With that, we're done with Johto, since the ultimate challenge, the Pokemon League, is in Kanto. So we return to Newbark Town to say hi to Professor Elm, and then access Victory Road. It's a bit shorter in these games, but in the end, Silver surprises us. And thanks to the combo of Rest and Sleep Talk, supplemented by Ice Beam and Thunderbolt, 2 coverage moves that can hit pretty much all Pokemon in the game, we know how to overcome Silver's mixed team. It's a nice little warm-up before the league, which still holds surprises. The first thing we do in this gauntlet is to teach our little Sentret the TM return, to have the most powerful and accurate normal stab possible. So when we face Will, we no longer have the Bolt Beam combo, but we have a physical move for his psychic Pokemon. Xatu is sent out first, and despite having half our level, it's faster, allowing it to use U-turn. So our Ice Beam lands on Jinx, without really doing serious damage. It can attack us, and our return isn't even a one-shot, which allows Will to heal his Pokemon. And the next turn, we're put to sleep by the purple Pokemon. We wake up quickly, fortunately, and we can take it down. But the next Pokemon is a Xatu, and it sends our HP to 6, while we finish it off with an Ice Beam. The battle looks very complicated, and indeed, Will's next Pokemon can finish us off with just a Psyshock. Back to the center, the league is starting off very well. We lost against the first trainer, we're clearly undertrained, so it's time to go back to training, to give ourselves a chance to progress as far as possible in this series of duels. So we return to Victory Road, where we attack the league again and again until we reach level 92 to have a serious rematch against Will. As last time, our Ice Beam finishes off Xatu, and Jinx joins the battle. With return, this time it's a OHKO. The battle started off better, and especially here, we are faster than Exeggutor. Our Ice Beam allows us to overcome it, right from the first action of the duel. The next Pokemon, Slowbro, is quite bulky, and our return attack manages to defeat it, but only after 3 hits, which is huge for a Pokemon of its caliber, and quite embarrassing indeed. The final Xatu comes in, and we'll allow ourselves a little break to recover all our hit points, to finally attack with a final Ice Beam and set aside Clément and his psychic Pokemon. And there we go. We can thank Ice Beam for getting the job done. Now it's time for Koga and his team with lots of bugs, so we'll take advantage of our well-stocked TM inventory and teach Flamethrower instead of Sleep Talk to have a super effective way to deal with his Pokemon. So Ariados is knocked out with a simple Flamethrower, and it's amusing to imagine a Sentret breathing fire. Anyway, we prevent Forretress from exploding, also hitting it with a quadruple effective attack. Then comes Mook. It takes us a lot more turns to defeat it, but the advantage is that we don't lose HP, so we're in excellent shape to face Koga's last 2 Pokemon. His signature Pokemon comes in, and despite its double team, we manage to hit it with an Ice Beam, which one-shots it directly. The ultimate Pokemon of the former Fuchsia City champion is Venomoth, which we illuminate with a final Flamethrower. Flamethrower. Bingo, 2 out of 5. It's certain that we can't say the progression was very easy, since it takes several attempts for each of his members. But generally speaking, when we're fast enough, we strike in one hit. The next room belongs to Bruno, a judo master who doesn't seem to be in a very good mood, and he starts with Hitmontop, which attacks just like in the original games, with Dig, while we engage with Flamethrower in hopes of burning it unsuccessfully, but it's still a 2 HKO, and we can welcome Hitmonlee, renamed in homage to the martial artist Bruce Lee. Flamethrower is preferred at first, but as it uses swagger to boost our attack, Return becomes interesting on the second hit, and we can already welcome Machamp, who, as you might guess, if he lands his attack, one-shots us. Fortunately, with the attack boost that Hitmonlee gave us, the 6-armed monster falls to its knees, drained of its hit points. Onix still has a terrible special defense, so Ice Beam does the job, and thus it's the Pokemon named in homage to Jackie Chan in its English version only that tried its luck against the terrible Sentret from the great metropolis of Newbark. Unfortunately for him, we beat him hands down, and Bruno has to surrender to the authorities because his muscles are just for show. So, we can go see Agatha's replacement, a certain Karen, an expert in Dark-type Pokemon. And what Pokemon is more iconic than Umbreon for this type? Moreover, Return struggles to do much damage to the evolution, and we see here that the game's AI becomes a bit smarter, as on the second turn, the opposing trainer switches out and sends in a Ghost-type Pokemon, which is completely immune to our Return attack. So, we'll try to burn it, and Flamethrower seems to be a 2 HKO, but as I just said, the trainers are smarter, and Gengar uses Destiny Bond before we attack, which would KO our Sentret if we were to finish it off this turn. Fortunately, after falling for it 10 times, we know that we can use the Return attack once its HP is in the orange, and on the next attack, char the demonic equivalent of Clefable. Speaking of charred demonic beings, Houndoom enters the scene, so we reserve a series of returns, praying not to be burned by its incandescent attacks. Murkrow comes next with little success. We still have Ice Beam, and finally, we can rematch Umbreon. But first, we're going to take a little nap to recover our HP, because we know this Pokemon can't really touch us. The Pokemon puts up a strong fight, but as we always have this safety net of recovering all our hit points at any time, in the long run, we can get rid of it, especially thanks to a burn that our Flamethrower finally inflicted. When Vileplume enters the field, we have a perfectly suited attack to finish it off. There we go. It's starting to get very technical to win battles against the champions, and the advantage is that now we're within reach of the champion and his plethora of flying-type Pokemon. Gyarados being mandatory. When we're going to face Peter, we need to get a new Thunderbolt TM to teach to Sentret. This way, we can one-shot water and flying Pokemon and have a fairly decent amount of HP left before tackling the series of Dragonite, loyal to the champion. Ice Beam is our best friend, but the real factor that will allow us to survive the first dragon is that it uses the Protect move instead of tormenting us with Outrage. It's the same for the second Dragonite, which remains quite passive, although hindering, and if we don't miss our attack, we can see some progress in this battle. The third slave of Mewtwo hurts us badly with its physical stab, but we're at 81 GP at 2/3 of the battle. Will that be enough to get past the last 2 Pokemon? Anyway, the opponent's Charizard fails to finish the battle, so we take advantage of that to rest, endure for 2 turns, then attack, rest again, endure once more, and electrocute the favorite Pokemon of a good portion of the Poke community. This tactic is used again against Aerodactyl, and after some well-deserved rests, we glimpse a ray of hope at the end of the tunnel to extinguish the prehistoric Pokemon. There we go. It might be a small detail for you, but for me, it means a lot. We have defeated the Pokemon League with just a Sentret. This is the result of great determination, especially in training, but also in using all available techniques, including TM, to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. After this victory, Professor Oak comes to us, but it's time for us to access the Pantheon to record the pre-evolution of Furret. Feel free to leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed seeing a basic Pokemon defeat a plethora of dragons, and buckle up because the adventure isn't over. Indeed, we're told that there's a new region to visit, or rather revisit, as if we go to Olivine Port, we can take a boat to Kanto. We receive Professor Oak's National Pokédex before boarding, and once on board, we're tasked with finding a passenger's little girl. This requires us to wake up a sailor so we can be allowed to pass to the captain's cabin, where she wanted to play. So, we start a game of hide and seek with her, and now that the matter is resolved, the boat is just arriving at its destination, and we dock at Vermilion City. It's probably the most beautiful Kanto in 2 dimensions we've ever seen. So, before starting our badge collection, we'll try to solve the problems there. And when we talk about problems, Team Rocket is never far away, as an isolated member has stolen part of the generator from the power plant, preventing the magnet train from functioning properly. So, we kick this trainer's butt, whom we'll meet again in Black and White, which allows us to restart the machine and receive the Poké Flute frequency as a gift on our Poké Gear. It's perfect for us, as a Snorlax was sleeping in front of the Diglett's cave, preventing us from accessing the western part of the region. We can say that now Kanto is ready to accept our challenge, and so we'll face the gyms in my preferred order, which is like in blue, red, yellow, and green, with Brock as the very first trainer. The battle begins with a Graveler that he still hasn't evolved, which is perfect for us, as Ice Beam is enough to take it down, as is Rhyhorn, which has has exactly the same dual type. Pierre's third Pokemon that isn't fully evolved is an Onix, and as in the league, an Ice Beam allows us to cool Pierre's hopes of victory. For Kabutops, which is faster and thus inflicts damage on us, Thunderbolt is our friend since it's also water type. To avoid repeating myself, Almastar has the same dual type, and we must withstand at 6 GP before KOing it. But now, the battle is over and we've won our 9th badge. The series starts again. However, we'll avoid Misty in second place, as after several attempts, she's far too strong for us, so we deserve to XP a little, for example at the 3rd badge. Lieutenant Surge, on the other hand, is really not a fan of the return attack, and apart from his Magneton, which offers a bit of resistance, we can say that the battle was only going in one direction. After acquiring the Thunder badge, we can return to Cerulean City's municipal pool to shock the water-type Pokemon of the gym leader. Quagsire resists the Thunderbolt attack. 2 returns are enough, and the most important thing with Lapras is that it doesn't sing a Requiem. So, when we arrive against Starmie, we're in a good position to finish it off in one blow, and that's 11 badges before facing the 2 worst gym leaders in the region. Erica has a bit of bad luck with her Bellossom freezing, but having a Tangela in a generation where Tangrowth is available is an unnamed aberration. So, Janine is a bit like an eco-friendly Koga. Ice Beam can finish off Crobat in one hit. Weezing, on the other hand, is more problematic since it's bulkier, and it can poison us, but thanks to Rest, we're never actually threatened. So, Ariados can come in to take its return. I repeat, Ariados can come in to take its return, and Janine can offer us her badge after calling her Venomoth. That's good. 15 out of 18. We can go up to Saffron to challenge the Psychic-type gym leader. Obviously, Return is our best friend, and in no time at all, we've already taken down the sea in Pallet Town to go to Cinnabar Island, or at least what remains of it, to learn that Blaine is on the Seafoam Islands and has set up a gym there. For the occasion, we've taught Surf again to our Pokemon, especially because the battle is going to be more complicated. Magcargo is the first Pokemon, and yes, no, I wasn't talking about him. It is doubly weak to our attack. However, Magmar can really hurt us if it attacks us first, and we clearly can't take 2 attacks from Rapidash, so it's quite important not to be confused. When we finish it, it's already level 59. The level of the gym leaders in the last arenas is much higher, so we can fear the worst when we return to Viridian City, because Blue is waiting for us there with a mixed team. We know what we got ourselves into by attempting this challenge, so we face Blue with clenched fists, and unfortunately for the beauty of it, his team is far too formidable. We'll have to use a controversial technique by using Double Team. We're obviously at level 100 when we face him, and even then, it's not a guaranteed victory. So, against Exeggutor, we can escape as fast as possible, but we'll also resort to the clone for a very simple reason that you'll discover later. Ice Beam can finish off the Exeggutor, and when Machamp comes in, we know its ability, which prevents it from missing its attacks. So without the clone, it's impossible to survive against this Pokemon, especially considering its super effective stab moves. Fortunately, we're faster, and with Return, we can 2 HKO it by bidding farewell to our clone. Arcanine is recalled to use Fire Blast, but since our evasion is very high, it misses its attack, and we use the little HP we have left to create a clone. By continuously hammering with Return, we can attack the Arcanine, which does a little damage to the clone, but doesn't destroy it. So there are still 3 Pokemon left before winning the battle. Raiden isn't a fan of Ice Beam, that's more than 2, and if Gyarados manages one of its attacks, we can still move on before facing Blue's famous Pidgeot. It's quite nice to see 2 Pokemon from the first route of the game facing off, especially when it's our Pokemon taking the lead with an Ice Beam that freezes the opposing Pokemon and can secure the victory. The 16th badge of the Indigo League, the ultimate achievement for any respectable trainer. When we win this battle, we're pressured to finish 2 games at once before facing the ultimate challenge of the version, in a dark mountain of Mount Silver. And yes, despite the difficulty we had with Blue, we're still going to try to face Red, for better or for worse. The road is tough, but after several days of walking, we reach the summit of Silver Cave, and Red greets us with his 3 iconic dots. A battle of legends can begin. Pikachu enters the field. Sentret stares it down, and we'll start our series of double teams, immediately thwarted by Pikachu's Thunderbolt. Indeed, at level 88, the opposing Pokemon is far too powerful for us, and especially much faster. We didn't even have the chance to set up a double team. The party's over. I've tried many techniques against this Pokemon. There's nothing to be done. It's simply too fast. Even with maximum speed EVs, the Sentret we got in Cherry Grove City can't outspeed Pikachu, and without lying to you, even if it could, there are still a bunch of Pokemon behind it, which are at their final stage of evolution. So if we can consider the challenge successful, because we beat the league and got the 16 badges, the final boss is a cut above us, and we can say it now, yes, you can finish Pokemon Heartgold and Soul Silver with just Sentret, but not to the extent of reaching Red's level, who for once makes good use of his Pikachu. Honestly, these kinds of challenges are very tough, but the fact that Sentret can learn some cool moves allowed us to adapt to the opponent as much as possible, but often it was the leveling up that mattered. I hope you enjoyed this challenge, and if you did, don't hesitate to subscribe for more, especially because a large part of the audience watching these videos doesn't, even though it's what allows the channel to grow and eventually offer more content. If you have another challenge idea for Heartgold and Soul Silver, feel free to put it in the comments. In any case, we'll see you soon for new adventures. Au revoir.